You know, I've seen people act like that in pictures. What do they call them? Zombies or something?
Zombie.
What's a zombie?
Just what is a zombie?
Well, a zombie, there's, Mr. Bill is the living dead.
They are the living dead.
Getting the zombies.
It's an army of zombies. No armies could stand.
Because a zombie has no will of his own.
What is wrong? What is wrong?
Welcome to Zombie Strains, the podcast where we watch all the zombie movies. I'm John.
I'm Andy.
I'm Brad.
Hello, producer Brad. So this is a season 2, episode 1, and we have entered the 1950s.
Ooh.
So our movie today is not a movie exactly. It is a compilation of a Republic serial called Zombies of the Stratosphere from 1952. And it was shown, and we'll let producer Brad explain this a little bit, but it was shown in movie theaters, and we watched a compiled version of the whole thing. And I just have to say, Andy, like, jumping from 1948 to 1952 really does feel like a completely different world.
This was the wildest jump from movie to movie that we've done yet, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Andy, you are piloting our rocket ship this week, but where do we want to start with this movie? It's fascinating on so many levels. My brain was sort of reeling. After my brain got really bored of the repetition, it was also reeling.
Yeah. Well, we usually start by talking about trigger content warnings. I didn't really know anything that listeners need to be too concerned about in this one. How about you?
This movie is so cautious, it won't even say the name of the agencies these people work for or the city they live in. So yes. I think we're pretty safe.
It's not true. It mentioned who Larry works for.
Oh, does he work for?
I had to Google it. I know, but I didn't feel like it was mentioned in
the Interplanetary Patrol.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yes. I have a thought. Yes, I do remember that now because it made me think of something else, which I'll bring up when we get there. So I don't think we need to warn anyone of anything other than the fact that, though delightful in many ways, it is a little repetitive. That's our trigger warning.
Delightful? Is that? Okay. Well, I look forward to being convinced. All right. Brad, do you want to give us the rundown on how this was made and who was behind it?
Zombies of the Stratosphere is a Republic serial that was released on June 16th, 1952. That's a gap of 6 years since our last true zombie film, Valley of the Zombies. Serials, stories told over a series of short films, first started in Europe in 1908. The first U.S. serials started in 1912. Magazines and newspapers invested in film serials to promote their printed ones, and by the late 1930s, there were 3 studios producing serials, Universal, Columbia, and Republic. Republic released 4 serials a year. Republic's last serial was King of the Carnival in 1955, making Zombies of the Stratosphere one of the last. Some of the big movies from 1952 are The Greatest Show on Earth, High Noon, The Quiet Man, and Singing in the Rain. There were very few horror films in 1952. They include The Ghost Ship, The Black Castle, and a Lugosi film, Vampire Over London. Now, Zombies of the Stratosphere is the third of 4 Republic serials featuring a Rocket Man. The first was King of the Rocket Men from 1949, followed by Radar Men from the Moon, 1952.
Yeah, I just out of curiosity on Tubi, where I watched this, they recommended both of those immediately following this, and they both used the same Rocket Man outfit.
I will get into that later because they used the same special effects people throughout all the Republic serials.
Aha.
Zombies of the Stratosphere was the third, and Commander Cody, Sky Marshal of the Universe, was the fourth.
So, John, what's the better and more exciting title for your action movie hero? Commander Cody, Sky Marshal of the Universe, or what we get in this movie, Larry Martin?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'm going to have to go with Commander Cody, Sky Marshal of the Universe, but I understand the complication.
Larry Martin feels like a placeholder name, like while they brainstormed what the real hero name would be.
Yeah, and then they just didn't get around to it.
Well, what's crazier is the serial before this, which was Radar Men from the Moon. The character was Commander Cody, played by George Wallace. This comes out, it's Larry Martin, played by Judd Holdren. The next one is Judd Holdren playing Commander Cody. So this movie, they removed that. They didn't use the Commander Cody name for some strange reason.
Oh, weird. Okay.
That's weird. There must have been some sort of legal reason
unexplained.
For that, because otherwise
it's all the same company, the same writers.
Doesn't stop this from being a rip-roaring thrill ride, so...
No.
So the serial was directed by Fred Brannon, who had a brief but prolific career. He started directing in 1945 and had 38 credits between 45 and 1953. All are Western films and serials for Republic, and he died in 1953. Ronald Davidson wrote Zombies of the Stratosphere and single-handedly wrote almost all of the Republic serials of the 50s. He knew the Republic Library so well that he could write stories using previously filmed footage to save money.
And what was one of the other serials he wrote, Producer Brad?
Well, that was my next line. He was a writer on the Captain America serial that we keep encountering.
I know.
And later in his career, he wrote on Lost in Space and Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea.
I was a Lost in Space kid. I love that show.
The special effects were by Howard and Theodore Lydecker. They were under contract to Republic from 1935 until the mid-50s. They first created the Flying Rocket Man effect in 1941 for the serial The Adventures of Captain Marvel. They made a 7-foot-tall papier-mâché figure that weighed 15 pounds and was hung on a wire and slid across the camera's view. And I thought it actually looked pretty good in this film.
Yeah.
It did. It only started to wear a little bit once you realized he was in the same pose exactly every single time.
Yeah, overall, the special effects were pretty good, I thought. The problem being that they just repeated the same special effects shots over and over and over.
Saves money.
Yeah, I'd have to be convinced that the rocket special effects could be described as quote-unquote good. But
Both brothers were nominated for an Oscar for Best Visual Effects in 1941 and Howard again in 1943. Judd Holdren stars as Larry Martin, a member of the Interplanetary Patrol. Previously, he starred in the Captain Video Master of the Stratosphere serial. In 1953, starred as Commander Cody in Commander Cody, Sky Marshal of the Universe. Aline Town plays Sue Davis. Town was in 3 of the Rocket Men serials, King of the Rocket Men, Zombies, and Commander Cody. She acted into the 1980s, and her last acting credits were 8 is Enough, The Incredible Hulk, and Airwolf.
Oh, Airwolf. Whew.
This next little tidbit is for both of you, I believe. Wilson Wood plays the sidekick Bob. He was also in Radar Men from the Moon, Singing in the Rain, Jailhouse Rock, and Easter Parade. But Wilson was born Charles Woodrow Tolkien.
What?
His family wrote a letter to J.R.R. Tolkien in the 50s wondering if they were related. And Tolkien wrote back
Wow.
with details of his genealogy and the assumption that the families were related. Now, I'm sure you both know that famous photo of Tolkien where he's smoking the pipe outdoors with.
Yeah.
So Woodrow recreated that.
Look at that nose and those ears and that
They look
chin.
a lot alike.
Wow.
Okay,
I'll put this in the show notes for everyone to see.
Yeah,
That's a
remarkable.
little incredible.
Okay, listeners, you got to go to the show notes and check this out.
Yeah, just to look at, like, it could be because they staged it so well, but it's clearly before, like, you could do any sort of editing.
It's the smile. They have the same smile.
They have the same smile, yes.
The wrinkles around the eyes, everything.
Yeah.
It's eerie.
Huh.
Also in the cast, we have the Republic Robot, or what we should be calling Robot. The Republic Robot first appeared in Undersea Kingdom in 1936 and was created by the Lydecker brothers. It was upgraded in looks for Mysterious Dr. Satan and Zombies of the Stratosphere.
So just to be clear, this is the upgraded version of the robot?
This is the better
Yes.
one.
And when it was used in Mysterious Dr. Satan, which I don't have the year in front of me, the director was unhappy that they didn't have time or money to fix it because he thought it looked like a hot water heater.
That's what I wrote in my
with
notes.
legs.
It looks like a basement water heater.
Yeah, the director was not happy, but he was stuck with it.
Okay.
In 1958, the serial was edited into a 70-minute feature called Satan's Satellites and released as a double feature with Missile Monsters. It was also colorized in the 90s for TV.
Can we add Missile Monsters to the list of movies to watch for our next podcast, which is about movies with interesting names like Pillow of Death? Yeah.
So when you hear the title, I don't know what this movie is. What are you imagining?
I'm imagining monsters that are actually missiles as well. They're like Transformer monster missiles.
And now I got to look it up.
I had to say, so we'll get into this when we start discussing this, but going by the titles that they give the chapters or the episodes of this, these title makers are the biggest liars in all of cinema history.
For sure.
So I don't have any faith that Missile Monsters has monsters or missiles in it on the basis of this film that we're about to discuss. So, hey, Brad, would people go to theaters to watch one episode of this at a time?
They were released weekly, and you would go to the theater, you would see a cartoon, you would see a serial or two, and then you'd see your feature.
Oh, so these are like bonus, sort of bonus content.
And at this point, like TV is pretty widespread, but it's not everywhere. So I think, as a little kid, like, I mean, that's great incentive. Like, Mom, can I have another nickel? I want to go see the next installment of Zombies of the Stratosphere,
So, hey, let's pause for a minute and talk historical context. This is the 1950s. John and I have a lot of fondness for the 50s as an era, so we'll try to restrain ourselves. But there is a lot going on.
But if you are interested more, we're going to do about a 30, 45-minute bonus episode that's going to be released alongside this one called The 1950s, where we'll talk we'll do a deeper dive into the historical context, because it is a fascinating and complicated time. And we're going to do that in the context of cinema and the zombie movie, but there's a lot of historical stuff we want to bring in. So
the things happening in the 1950s are a really, really rich vein for zombie movies to mine. And I hope that we're going to see that in a lot of the films we watch in the coming weeks. So
I'm very curious. Yeah.
So, but what was specifically going on when this serial came out in 1952? So, a lot going on. The Today Show premiered on NBC. Science throughout this decade is just rocketing into sci-fi territory. So we have the first use of a mechanical heart with a human patient, the first open heart surgery. Across the pond, Elizabeth becomes the queen. Here in the U.S., we have what is sometimes considered the first big rock and roll show, Moondog Coronation in Cleveland, Ohio. And the background radiation, if you will, of this era is the Red Scare and the atomic projects. So at this time, the Red Scare is well underway, a lot of paranoia about what the Russians are doing, a lot of fear that the Russians are going to surpass us in different ways. And more specifically, this is the year 1952 that we developed the H-bomb. This was a source of great consternation during its long development. A lot of disagreement among scientists and politicians about whether we should develop the H-bomb. And I mention that here because this serial uses the threat of an H-bomb, one of them. It presents as an existential threat to the entire planet. And I think that reflects the kind of uncertainty about just how awful the H-bomb might be.
Yes.
So do you have any thoughts on that, John?
So when the United States detonated atom bombs in Japan in 1945, I think it was pretty terrifying. But there were some people who thought, well, this is our technology, we'll keep it. And there's two things here. First of all, the Russians quickly developed an atomic bomb. They detonated their first bomb just a few years before this movie, 1949. Additionally, they were really helped by stolen technology from spies. So those themes are all over this thing.
Yes. In fact, in 1949, if the H-bomb is one of those ripped from the headlines thing that shows up in this movie, the other is, I think, a reference to the Klaus Fuchs atomic secrets case, which is in 1949. He was actually an H-bomb scientist who was passing atomic research to the Soviets. So that is very blatantly present in this serial.
100%.
Okay, that's what I've got for history. John, let's do a quick second look at the movie poster for our listeners. This is a good poster, so if you're listening, take a second, check our show notes or go Google this because it's a fun one. John, can you just describe the poster for us?
Yeah, this poster absolutely rules. So it says zombies in big red letters in a font that we've become very used to. And it says, of the Stratosphere. And then it has illustrations of like these zombie-like creatures jumping around. There's a robot with an axe that our hero, who is dressed in a rocket pack costume, is shooting. There's two giant rocket ships flying through the air. Like it's just sci-fi all the way. And it's just brightly colored, and it's clearly designed to appeal to like children, basically. Like if you're a 12-year-old who wants to admire a big action hero, this is your movie, is what it says.
I am enormously fond of the water heater robot wielding an axe.
Yes. The robot wielding the axe.
It really doesn't get much better.
No.
Okay. Yes, that poster is fantastic. So, John, give us the 30-second pitch describing what happens in this.
Yeah, so a rocket ship lands on the Earth, and there are 3 aliens in it. These are the titular zombies, though they don't refer to themselves as Martians, but they say they are from Mars. They land on Earth, and they have a plan. They're going to recruit an American doctor to help them, detonate an H-bomb to throw the Earth out of its orbit, and then they're going to detonate some bombs on Mars, and they're going to put Mars in Earth's orbit so they can have better weather. Now, it's up to Larry Martin and his team to stop them, and the way he does that primarily is by following the bad guys around and trying to see where they go, and then getting killed in a cliffhanger ending, but what we find out at the beginning of the following episode, he actually lived. And the end is them confronting the zombies, crashing their spaceship, and Larry cuts the wires so the H-bomb does not go off at the last second, and the Earth is saved. Is that a good enough summary?
That is great. Do we want to talk now or in our wrap-up about the word zombie and how it is used? Because...
Let's do that.
You want to talk now?
Well, I kind of want to talk about this movie broadly in the following way. I'm not sure why the word zombie is here. These guys are clearly Martians. They are aliens with an alien plot. But I think the big jump here, and we'll talk about this more in the wrap-up, is we have jumped from sort of like a mystical, spiritual, scary horror milieu, like if we take, for example, Valley of the Zombies, or even Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. We're still talking mad scientists and magic. We have jumped, and we are 2 feet landed in the middle of science fiction here, right? Like, we're not doing any of that zombie stuff anymore. So I think it's interesting they chose to call them zombies, because they're clearly not mindless. They're not, they can control themselves. They don't turn other people into zombies. They do use the word zombie in the movie, though. So yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, the quote zombies in this movie are so unlike any of the zombies we've seen in the 30s or 40s. I wondered if there had been some sort of like a last minute script change or something that recast these as I don't know, that recast these as Martians instead of zombies, or the other way around, because I'm just fascinated that they use the word zombies when I don't think anyone watching this would look at the Martians and say, that looks like a zombie.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I think they might have green face paint. In fact, the way they're dressed like medieval executioners.
Yes.
Like they have like the skull cap with like the little frill around the neck, and they have like a studded leather belts, and except for they have sparkles. So
yeah, this actually was a movie that really made me wish I could have seen it in color, because just I wanted to, the Martian outfits and the rocket ships, I just have to imagine they were really garishly colored, and I think that would have added a lot of visual excitement. But...
So in the colorized version, their skin is green.
Okay.
And the rocket ship is red.
Yeah, see, that's amazing.
But you don't get that from the black and white.
No. By the way, shout out, watch this on Tubi. Good job, Tubi. And I think it was the best version out there, too.
Yeah.
So
I watched it on YouTube, which was horrible.
Yeah, the Tubi version was good quality. Okay, so here's how we're going to do this, Brad and John. This is 2.5 hours of serial adventures.
Yes.
This is 12 episodes or chapters. So we are not going to walk through this movie's plot beat by beat like we have done in some other movies, partly because it all of these chapters are just so repetitive. So
yes,
I am going to give just a 1-sentence plot summary of each episode, John and Brad, or each chapter, and then let's take a quick minute just to see what we have to say if we jotted down anything noteworthy about it. I think I'll have more to say about the first couple of chapters here, and then once it starts getting pretty repetitive, I'm not going to have that much to say. So, listeners, we'll try to keep moving briskly through this.
All right.
So here, let's take this first chapter. It's the longest of the chapters. Comes in about 20-ish minutes, or 20, somewhere in that vicinity, whereas most of them are, I think, about 13, 14 minutes. And let's
Yes.
talk about this one in a little more detail because it provides the template that the rest of these chapters are going to follow. So, chapter 1, it's titled The Zombie Vanguard. And here's
That's
my
right.
one-sentence overview. Martians are planning to detonate an H-bomb to knock Earth out of orbit so Mars can move into Earth's orbit unless the Interplanetary Patrol can stop them from gathering the pieces needed to build that bomb. And in fact, as we're going to learn this, for the next 2.5-ish hours, this exciting plot will revolve entirely around the the logistics of the Martians trying to source rocket or bomb parts. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have a comment to say about that, but I have 2 long clips,
Okay.
and they're both in this first episode, but they sort of lay the whole thing out. So why don't we listen to the first one now?
Yeah.
And this will be the unidentified aircraft one.
The unidentified aircraft is now less than 50 miles off the coast and still on a course which will bring it close to this city.
Is there time to intercept it with your rocket?
No, at the rate that ship is traveling, it'll be out of radar range before we can get off the ground. Unless it lands. Then ground defense will handle it, Bob. Unless Mr. Steele thinks we can help.
Yes, Larry, I do. It's the duty of my department to handle all matters menacing world security. And you're one of my executives. I realize that your work has usually been in the interplanetary zone. In this case, I think you ought to take charge, both on land and in the air.
Very well. I suppose the regular defense network has already been alerted.
Yes, they're standing by until we see what that ship's going to do.
So, first off, I think Larry should not have volunteered to handle this on his own, because what he's got right now is just Bob. It's Larry and Bob, and they're going to battle all the aliens and their henchmen for the next 2.5 hours.
Can I just say that at the end of all of this, I could not name or distinguish any of the men on the Interplanetary Patrol.
Nope.
The only one who was distinguishable was Larry, and that's because he's the one that wears the rocket jetpack.
Yes. So 2 things on that. First of all, there's a fist fight in one of the later chapters, and there's the 2 goons, and Larry and Bob, and everyone's fist fighting, and I literally could not tell you who was hitting who or what was happening. Or they were all wearing fedoras and suits, and I just had no idea. So, but let's talk about this rocket pack.
Yeah, so the pattern that all these episodes will follow is they learn about a problem. Usually they detect that the Martians are doing something.
Right.
And then typically Larry will put on his rocket pack and fly out to investigate / stop the Martians. There will be some kind of action scene. Sometimes his colleagues from the Interplanetary Patrol get involved.
Colleagues or just Bob? I guess Sue does join.
Yeah. And typically they end with like the bad guys kind of mostly getting away and then on some kind of cliffhanger. So why don't we talk about what it's like when Larry suits up? So, John, do you want to do the honors of describing Larry's Rocket Man costume here?
Yeah, so this is kind of amazing. Actually, I want to preface this because I think we're going to run into a lot of this, particularly in this first episode, and then less as we go on. Like, as I'm watching this, so this is 1952. All of us here that are recording this podcast grew up in the 70s, 80s, early 90s, and the filmmakers that made us fall in love with movies, George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Robert Zemeckis, and even fiction writers that we love, Stephen King, right, are all boomers, and they all grew up at this time.
Yeah.
And as I was watching this first episode, I was like, oh, that's where they got that, and that's where they got that. Like, this was like imagination fuel for an entire generation of filmmakers, and it felt like it was all right here in front of us. Did you feel that way too?
Yeah, so this first episode had all of it. I felt like, yeah, we were watching the blueprint for Indiana Jones and James Bond and The Rocketeer and a million other things.
So that's the first thing. This costume, which is what you originally asked me about, it's a leather pilot's jacket, cinched at the waist with a big rocket pack on the back and a metal helmet with eye and mouth holes cut out. And it's literally the inspiration for The Rocketeer, right? Like, I can't think of another way to say it. If you haven't seen The Rocketeer, it's amazing and clearly based on this rocket outfit.
Yeah, it looks exactly like The Rocketeer if The Rocketeer wore the dumbest looking helmet that is possible to wear.
That's the weak spot of this costume, right? Because the leather jacket is kind of long and cinched the waist, and he's got like a pistol, and like it's all kind of cool. He's got cool boots on, and then the helmet is completely dorky. But maybe it looked cool at the time. I don't know. So
I'll imagine that
this rocket costume was upgraded from previous ones in that it had the radio that clicked on the front belt, that big lunchbox.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That was new for this film.
He has that Darth Vader style chest computer, like dials and knobs on his chest plate. And did you notice the way it has the worst altitude controls, because to go up or down, he has to turn a knob, like
which he would not be able to see with that helmet on. Right, so I'm
exactly,
like,
and they're labeled up or down.
Yeah, and they're labeled like, wait, was it the left one or the right one was down? I can't remember. Yeah, it would be bad.
So he always takes off, though. He takes this big running leap onto a springboard or something like that, and then they cut to some much repeated footage of him flying through the air, or that model that they made sailing across on a wire.
You know what memory this sparked for me? Like, so first of all, I don't know how much detail you want to go into, but there's a truck chase here, right? Where he's fighting some guys on a truck right out of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, yeah.
Like all kinds of stuff. But you know what the first like childhood memory adventure TV show that came to mind when I watched this?
What's that?
Ultraman.
Oh.
And the Science Patrol.
Huh.
Like that's because he's flying through the air. He looks like Ultraman. Like it's this group of scientists who are running around solving problems. Of course, the Science Patrol had way better outfits. But other than that, I don't know if that's an inspiration here, but it just jumped into my mind when we were watching this.
So, yeah, I want to wrap up our chapter 1 discussion here, and so we can keep the pace moving here. But I just want to say, so there is more kind of packed into this first chapter than in the following ones. I want to talk quickly about our bad guys.
Yes.
So there's a couple of Martians, maybe 3 of them that we see. One of them is Leonard Nimoy.
Yes, we have a clip later of what I believe is Leonard. This is his debut, and I believe it is the first words he uttered and were displayed on film from our debut hero, Leonard Nimoy.
And they will move you to tears, just to spoil it.
But not to ruin it, he was in 2 movies that came out before this within a month or 2.
Man.
So which was shot first, which came out first, which is his debut? I don't know.
All right. Well, still, it's
in
early.
my heart, I feel like this is the first one that counts.
But yeah, let's get to the bad guys. We've got one bad guy clip, but let's lay it out.
Yeah, so the Martians are led by the top Martian is named Marex.
Yes.
And he is dressed in that sort of medieval looking outfit. He has kind of he is not a scenery chewing villain. He is like a very business-like, stern, like organizer. And he will be with us. Is that his
real chin? Is my question.
I wonder that too. He will be with us all the way to the very end. And John, did you have anything you wanted to say about him?
No, he's sort of. I think the reason he would be scary is he sort of represents, not to be too philosophical, but like cool bureaucratic calculation, right? Like he's scary because he has a mission. He's going to carry it out in a very sort of forensic way. And just if somebody gets in his way, he's like, well, they have to be eliminated. Let's eliminate them. He does not care. Yeah. He's emotionless.
I have to confess, I was a little disappointed. He was not just like hamming it up big time.
Yes.
Like some of the mad scientists and other villains we've seen in movies. But, and then the Martians are not really numerous enough to do this on their own. So actually, I would say the bulk of the antagonists that Larry and the patrol face throughout this serial are the Martians' human collaborators, who are just kind of, thugs in suits and fedoras, pretty much.
Yeah, Roth and what's the other one's name?
And one of their collaborators is a scientist. The one I think is a reference to Klaus Fuchs, who has a lab, who is helping the Martians actually build the H-bomb. So,
and Marex has to convince Dr. Harding to help him. So Marx just walks into Dr. Harding's office and they have this exchange.
And why do you think I'm going to help you? Because I'm in a position to inform your government that you've been selling atomic secrets to an unfriendly foreign power. The results of such an exposure would be much more unpleasant for you than the alternative I'm allowing. What is this project you're planning?
The orbit of our planet Mars is so far from the sun that climatic and atmospheric conditions there are much inferior to those on Earth. But in spite of these physical handicaps, my people have developed a means of correcting the situation.
You mean you can change the orbit of a planet?
Exactly. But of course, to accomplish that, we must first clear the orbit of Earth's interference. So my mission here is to plant an H-bomb explosion sufficiently strong to send Earth spinning out into space and leave room for my own planet.
So there it is. That's the plot.
There it is indeed. So I don't think we need to talk about this chapter anymore unless you have anything else to say, John. But I do have two quick questions for you.
I'm ready.
So in the main action scene in this episode is when Larry flies in and lands on the bad guy's truck and has, a very Indiana Jones style fight. Incredibly Indiana Jones, by the way.
Yes.
Fight. And here's my two questions. How excited were you when you saw that the vehicle Larry uses to chase down the Martian truck is a tank that was parked at the train station? And then my second question is, can you identify what that tank was?
Oh, that's a good one. I recognized it as a tank. I cannot tell you what that tank was, which is funny because I could recognize the airplane they used later, but that's another story.
It's a tankette. It is did you see, it's a cute little miniature tank.
Yes.
They built these in between World War I and World War II as a way to in World War I, they hadn't really figured out how to use tanks effectively on the battlefield. And this was an attempt to by introducing these cute little zippy miniature tanks that only one or two people could fit in. They were hoping to add some, I guess, maneuverability and defensibility to those big lumbering World War II behemoth tanks.
Wow.
I think they were phased out partly because they were very outclassed once World War II broke out by everything else on the battlefield.
And a stiff wind could blow them over, probably.
Yes. And also, I have to imagine the main reason that was it is impossible to retain any dignity while driving this goofy-looking thing around.
That thing zipping around with Larry's little face poking out of it was hilarious. I do want to, but now that you mentioned that, I do want to say one thing. Most of these episodes start with either the heroes or the villains employing some new, exciting technology to help solve a problem, whether it's Larry's rocket pack or this little mini tank or two different submarines or all kinds of stuff. But there's a lot of like technology forward to solve problems kind of plots in this.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay,
Did the idea of moving planets remind you of any other plots or stories?
I feel like
my first thought went to a Wildstorm comic from the early 2000s, Mr. Majestic.
Oh,
I remember that comic.
Where I can't remember what the threat was, but there was some alien coming, and so Mr. Majestic disguised our planet system by rearranging the planets.
I had forgotten about that one. That is hilarious.
The trope of the Earth's orbit getting knocked a little askew and causing some sort of global crisis like an ice age or something like that is actually a trope that will pop up later in some horror movies and thrillers, although I don't really think that's a very zombie feeling trope.
But I think, well, we'll get to it at the end. Or are we seeing the first hints of stories that contain an apocalypse? Though?
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Okay. So I want to move us along, guys. We're not going to spend that much time on the rest of these chapters, I promise. So chapter 2.
But the titles are worth it.
Yes. Chapter 2, Battle of the Rockets. And go ahead and put the word battle in quotes because the battle is two rockets flying around and one of them takes one shot at the other rocket and then that other rocket retreats. So if you were imagining a Star Wars style dogfight, that is not what you get. I just have a couple of notes on this one. So the Martians plan, all of these episodes begin with them detecting a different way that the Martians are trying to smuggle bomb parts to their hidden base. So in this case, the Martians are using their rocket ship. So for a couple of episodes, the patrol is going to try and shut down that rocket ship, and it's going to force the Martians to resort to ever dumber ways of transporting their bomb parts.
I love that that Larry Martin gets on his rocket ship, what he does is he has the rocket ship take off with the flunky who's flying it, and then he meets it in the air and climbs aboard. But he like slams into the side of it. Like, I'm worried, like, Larry, it's not a good repeatable process. You could just get on the rocket before it takes off.
Yeah,
so.
It's not the first time he chooses to board the rocket that way. Like, there's at least one of these episodes they're like, are you going to come with us? And he's like, no, I'll get on my rocket suit and meet you up in the air and board the rocket then. Like, well, why don't you just walk with me and climb into the rocket? Good sir.
It's next door. Yeah, exactly.
The only I have just a couple things here. First of all, they sure love their rocket ship footage, and this is where I realized we were going to be in for a lot of repeat special effects shots. And there is a boat chase scene in this episode that is pretty good, and it is incredibly foreshadowing of all the boat chases you've ever seen in like a James Bond movie or Indiana Jones
and Last Crusade. I really, while watching this, I wonder if like Spielberg actually had this specific serial in mind with the way he framed some of those action sequences. It sounds crazy to say it because it's so incompetently done in this and so professionally done by Spielberg, but the similarity is remarkable. And my last comment is, so the cliffhanger on this one is at the very end. Who is the good guy who's driving the boat? Is that Larry's It's Larry.
sidekick? Is that Larry? So
yeah,
the bad guys come up and they throw like a harpoon at him,
like a boat hook. Yeah, it's a pointed boat hook.
Yes, and but
they throw it like a harpoon, like overhand. Like,
they do, and although he pretends that he has just been absolutely impaled by it, it bounces off of him. It's really funny. So
there's a later moment where he's climbing out of the water.
Yes,
water cave, and one of the villains throws his gun at him, and it hits him like in the shoulder, and he's like, ah, and he like falls backwards. I think Larry's not impressing me, is what I'm saying.
No. So I didn't have anything else for this chapter. Did you, John?
No, I'm good.
On to chapter 3. Undersea Agents. And this is another lie of a title because I don't think anyone goes under the water in this one.
Oh. Andy, just when you thought it couldn't get more boring than watching rockets chase each other around, we have people walking really slowly underwater repeatedly.
Oh, yes. Okay, so that's where this is coming from. So this requires description. The Martian's base, it has 2 rooms that are inexplicably connected by an underwater tunnel. And this show is convinced that nothing is more interesting than long shots of the Martians walking through the water from one of these rooms to the other. I can't overstate how many times we have to watch someone move at a snail's pace through the watery tunnel. Is that what you're talking about?
And further, at the beginning of every episode, they run the same, like it has the same intro, and there's a sequence of somebody walking underwater really slow between the 2 ladders.
I did wonder how they were doing the underwater scenes because
I think they were underwater.
It looked an awful lot like they were genuinely underwater, but they had to have some sort of breathing apparatus for some of these scenes, right?
I'll be curious
because they were just really doing a good job of hiding.
Because famously, like when technology improved a little bit, they would do underwater scenes that weren't underwater, like in the Roger Moore James Bond movies.
Yeah,
there's just like smoke and people moving slowly and fans and stuff.
Fans blowing hair.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway,
but we should talk about Larry's underwater gear. What was he wearing every time he goes underwater?
Well, he doesn't go in his suit, thank God. He takes off his shirt and tie, but he keeps on his trousers and shoes, and he wears his undershirt. Yeah. So I think this is risque for 1952.
I didn't give us the summary of chapter 3 is the Martians and their collaborators borrow, like literally borrow, a submarine from the Russians, not identified as the
power,
Russians, but identified as a hostile enemy power, to smuggle parts of their H-bomb. So the action on this one is that it's just, I'm sorry. So there's a Russian submarine that's delivering them H-bomb parts or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Right.
The only thing I wanted to mention is that so the action scene is here. The heroes are like racing around on the surface of the water, and there's a toy submarine. We see footage of a toy submarine under the water. That's the Russians.
Yes.
And nothing really comes of it, but I tried to figure out from scenery like where this is supposed to be taking place. And I know I know we were supposed to imagine this is the open ocean off the West Coast, since this clearly takes place in Southern California. But
Right.
it just looked an awful lot to me like there was a Russian submarine in Lake Tahoe or something. And
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So nothing else noteworthy that I jotted down on this one. Oh, there is something. So here's where I first noted, I would like to hear your thoughts on this, John. The gunfights in this,
Yes.
there are gunfights constantly. They are super boring. Am I right about that?
So two things about them. Yes. Well, three things. They're super boring. However, people have learned to shoot a gun in a way that isn't dumb, right? Like they aim, and they're not holding it next to their body. And three, I've never seen so many misses since I watched the A-Team.
Yeah.
Like they couldn't hit the side of a barn except for the one time they shoot Larry's air hose when he's underwater. Yeah.
And 4, they run out of bullets.
And they run out of bullets.
And
all
they
the
do
time.
that a lot. Yes. So yeah, I had the same thought, like that same sense of they are getting a better grasp of what guns, like a gunfight looks like, but they haven't figured out how to make those fights interesting because every gunfight plays out like this. The two sides just take cover behind something, and then you get alternating shots of them emerging from cover and shooting, and no one ever hits anything. You hear that loud ricochet sound after like 85% of the shots, which made me laugh.
Right.
And I think that filmmakers, or at least these guys, have not figured out how... I mean, it's ostensibly a dangerous situation to be in a gunfight. So you would think there would be stakes, but you don't feel those stakes when no one ever gets hit. And when everyone spends the whole fight just like standing in place behind cover.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
To their credit, this is a problem in a lot of modern movies too, I think, that gunfights seem like they would be high stakes, but it actually takes skill, I think, to make a gunfight interesting to watch.
Absolutely.
All right, on to chapter 4, guys. Chapter 4 is excitingly called Contraband Cargo.
Yes.
In this next chapter, in this thrilling tale of Martian smuggling logistics, the Martians are now smuggling their H-bomb parts via airplane and evil cowboys. Yeah. Our heroes do what they do best, which is to tail the bad guys for a while and then let most of them escape. John, did you have any thoughts about this episode?
This is Larry's entire plan. In every episode, he's like, I'll follow them. And maybe I'll find out their base. And the thing is, he gets to their base in the third episode. He just doesn't know it's their base. And he can't figure it out.
I didn't understand that at all. Yeah, it's very bewildering. This is where I started to notice. So somewhat paradoxically, these chapters are all like 13 minutes long. So you would think that time is at a premium. And yet... these episodes are filled with a startling amount of what I would call filler shots. Like these long shots of like when somebody walks off the scene, the camera follows them while they slowly walk to their car and open the door and get in and start the engine and drive down the driveway. And I have to imagine it was just different ideas about filmmaking there, but there's a lot of just wasted time, and yet none of it is spent giving you character moments.
None.
Or like character building exchanges or dialogues or jokes or gags or anything. And so this is in conjunction with thinking about how much filler there was that didn't add to my enjoyment of this. I also realized like that what people are doing here could only barely be called acting.
Yes.
Right?
And also like, are any of them married? Do they have children? Where do they eat? When they...
Everyone is just delivering their lines in a tone of heroic urgency. Nobody has a different personality than anybody else. Everyone just has this, the bad guys behave exactly the same way, all of them. And the good guys do the same. And that's fine. And I mean, maybe watching this in 13-minute chunks, it would have been a different experience. But watching it all through, this is the point here in chapter 4 and later where this started to feel like a real drag. And I think it is because there's just not any life to it beyond these repetitive action scenes.
Yeah, it's like Larry tails them. These two thugs think they killed him. I mean, they think they killed him more than Blofeld thinks he's killed James Bond. Like, just over and over. Yeah, we got him. Let's get out of here.
Yeah.
Yep, we got him again. However, I do have one thing in episode 4, because this is where the sort of A-bomb paranoia comes in. So I'm pretty sure this is chapter 4. If not, people, you'll have to forgive me. However, if you watch the whole thing and correct me, I mean, I'll be really impressed. So, but they returned from whatever latest plan they had to try to track down the bad guys. And after discovering some of the equipment that they've been trying to smuggle in, they have this conversation.
It's my guess that some enemy power is preparing to build A-bombs right here in this country.
And then use them here?
I'm afraid that may be it. We must use every means we can to stop them.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Steele, for your urgent instructions.
And every line of dialogue is delivered in that exact same tone and style.
Right, like this is absolutely terrifying. Somebody's building an A-bomb in the U.S. and would explode it, and they're like, well, we should do everything we can to stop them, don't you think? Yes, we should. All right, let's go.
All right, I just have 2 little quick notes on this one, John, then we can move on. First, I laughed out loud because towards the end of this, Larry throws a bomb or grenade or something, and it explodes the bad guy's airplane.
Yes.
And then one of them turns to the other and says, well, there won't be much fight left in that crew. Well, yeah. That's because you just killed them
right.
with a fiery explosion. But
I think that might be part of the restriction is, but these are targeted children. Maybe they don't want to kill people. Now I do have a note on this. The airplane is a Beechcraft Model 18. So anyway, sorry. Carry on.
Thank you. Listeners, note that. And lastly, if you have your Indiana Jones checklist here, this episode has a minecart chase where the hero is finds himself in a minecart and goes flying around. And the cliffhanger actually is that you think he has flown off, because all of these minecart tracks end at the edge of cliffs. So you think he has flown off a cliff in a minecart, but he hasn't actually. Okay, on to chapter 5. This is maybe I don't know. Exciting is not the word, but chapter 5, the Iron Executioner.
Yes.
And this is...
It's a way better name than the robot we made out of a hot water heater. So
yes. So my description for this one is, short of cash for their H-bomb, the Martians build a robot to rob a bank.
Yeah, I love this.
What happens?
There's so much about this robot that is hilarious. First of all, it's indestructible, yet one man can carry it under his arm and tuck it into the back seat of his car. So that's amazing. It's like lightweight and superpowered. And they do rob a bank with it, which is also amazing.
Yes. As we have mentioned once or twice before with our 40s zombie movies, they just haven't figured out that things are scarier when they move a little faster.
Yeah.
So this robot moves at about the pace of a zombie. I mean,
that's the most zombie-like thing in this movie is the way this slow robot stack.
Later in the there's going to be a lot of this robot from here on out. But in one of the last chapters, there is actually a chase scene where the robot is chasing 2 characters, and they have to keep pausing because they get too far ahead of it and wait for it to catch up, then act scared, and then run a little ways ahead of it. So it seems like such an obvious thing. Why don't you just make a robot suit that can move at like a jogging pace or something?
Yeah.
But I can't wait for the first movie where the zombie or the supernatural threat actually seems like it could catch you if you were trying to avoid it.
I have a question for you. So they control the robot remotely. Did this feel like something to you? Because it sure felt like something to me.
Well, it felt like drone controls.
Yes, but
today, right?
Yes, but more. I was thinking it was like playing a video game. Like they're remotely controlling this character, and it felt like they were playing a video game for sure.
See, I didn't have that instinct because I was too annoyed. Because anytime they do this, the little view screen that the bad guys are using shows a view that they can't possibly be seeing unless they have. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I got to stop myself or I won't stop ranting about that. Chapter 6, Murder Mine. Back to the mine. Actually, half of these episodes take place in the mine.
Yes.
I wrote more shenanigans in the mine. The Martians carry out an incredibly convoluted plan to reactivate the robot, which has been brought back to the good guys' headquarters.
And I am sure you are referring to the robot, but
Yes.
Also, I think you need to call the mine the Bat Cave because that's what Leonard Nimoy does at the end of the movie.
He does, actually.
He calls it the Bat Cave.
So just to explain it, like we're kind of glossing over the plot, but just to be clear, there's an entrance to the mine, and in the mine, in the entrance, there's a ladder that goes down underwater, and then you walk 20 feet, and there's another ladder that goes up into another place. And in this other place, that's where the Martians are hanging out, listening in to all the conversation hanging in near the entrance. And the people, the regular people, A, don't know the Martians are there, and B, don't know they're listening to them. So, like, that is the plot. Like, that is the key way that the zombies know what they're doing.
Throughout a huge percentage of the movie, the good guys are in one cave in this mine, and the zombies Martians are 20 feet away, listening to them in the hidden part, and no connections are made until the final chapter. So my only notes for Murder Mine are that there's like an actually okay underwater knife fight
yes,
in this episode.
It's okay.
It was kind of okay. And then the big action sequence is that the robot gets reactivated and it starts rampaging around the Interplanetary Patrol's base, which is just like a completely generic looking office building.
Yes.
And
I think half this movie's budget was used on easy break chairs that they smash over the robot.
That's what I was going to say. They break about 500 chairs over the robot. And here's the thing that irks me.
Just one?
In all of these, all of these movies where there's this unstoppable threat, in this case, the robot, okay? It has been repeatedly shown that gunshots do not hurt the robot.
Correct.
But they shoot the robot so much. Modern movies do not escape this. I can't watch Terminator 2 without getting annoyed at how much time they spend shooting at a Terminator that has been repeatedly shown to not be hurt in any way, shape, or form by bullets.
Yeah.
But here, everybody's go-to response to the robot is to shoot at it. It never works. And they do kind of defeat it with the chairs because they push it into
like
some like open electrical junction box that's just sitting there in the office.
Yes.
So anything else about Murder Mine there, John?
Good title.
That is a good one. Chapter 7, Death on the Waterfront. More tales of the Martians sourcing bomb parts involving the return of the Russian submarine we saw in an earlier episode.
Yeah, and I think this is the episode that has the fist fight between the four people, and I can't tell who's who throughout the whole thing. The only one you can tell is Sue because she's chained to a boat anchor that gets dropped into the water. That's the cliffhanger on this one.
So it's funny that you mention that fight, that there's a big fist fight on the waterfront that John is referring to, and you can't tell who anyone is because they all look identical. But I actually noted this is one of the only action scenes that felt dynamic and kind of thrilling to me.
Yes.
Because they were moving around and they looked like they were trying to hit each other. And it had a sort of chaos feel to it that none of the other action scenes, which have all been very static, have had.
Yes.
So,
yep.
Chapter 8, I did not understand the literal meaning of this chapter title, Hostage for Murder.
I think they're referring to the fact that they took Sue hostage at some point.
But for murder, what does that mean?
I think it's like to murder. I'm going to murder my hostage. I have no idea. I think they just wanted to work the word murder in. That's my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. My description here is the Martians hatch a scheme to steal a shipment of uranium, one of the last things they need for their H-bomb.
This is like their third try. Can we be clear about that? Yeah.
They capture Martin and use him to get into the good guy headquarters. So they capture him because he flies. He's like going to attack their truck.
Right.
But he flies into the back of it and like stuns himself. And he doesn't even do it. And then they just instantly capture him.
Well, no, he sticks his gun through the window in the back and says, pull over. And they go, okay. And they drive the truck crazy and he falls over and gets knocked out.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe I'm a little mixed up. But then they use him to get into the headquarters of the patrol, and there's a fight, and then we move on to Chapter 9. This has a good title too, The Human Torpedo.
Yes, but there was no human torpedo. I was a little disappointed. No. I bet that's what happens with the missile monsters or the monster missiles or whatever.
Yeah, that's why I don't trust Missile Monster in any way, because this is a lie.
Yeah.
In this one, I just wrote the heroes try to track the bad guys to their secret hideout. if that's a very vague sounding description, it's because my brain was starting to.
Can we pause here and
shut down?
And say my favorite thing about the beginning of every chapter titles? Not only do we get like 3 minutes of a rehash at the end of the previous episode where they show something happened that we hadn't seen, like in the minecart, Larry in the redo, he jumps out of it. But they give these section summaries to like bring you up to speed, and they show these like stiff wooden looking portraits of the main characters involved, like grimacing at the camera, like they're smiling, like their mother is forcing them to smile for their grandma or something. And it just cracked me up every time to see Larry like at the beginning of these episodes.
It's so good. I had a note on this. So I don't know if this is a general film thing. I was trying to think of our other films we've watched where there was a car chase scene, but for sure these filmmakers, they have not figured out how to believably film somebody who is supposed to be driving a car, because there are these long stretches where the car will be driving down a road that's mostly straight and the driver will be wildly whipping the steering wheel from left to right.
Yes.
So I want to know what year movies figure out how to drive cars better.
Just as an aside, do you feel they figured out there's great driving stunts in Bond, but do you feel like making it look like Bond is driving? I don't feel like they figured that out until like Roger Moore. What do you think?
It's surprisingly late, I think. Yes. I just noted on this one that there is an incredibly Indiana Jones boat chase sequence in chapter 9.
Yep.
And it includes like somebody pulling a boat up next to another one while they're both going at full speed and like jumping across from one boat to the other for a fist fight.
Yeah.
And that felt like that fight in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It was like exactly that. So did you have anything else before we move on? Because there is a crazy thing coming in the next episode.
It's crazy. I'm ready.
I have a small thing.
Okay. Yeah.
For as plotting and slow as these chapters have been, can you imagine if Dr. Harding wasn't here? Because every time the Martians need something, hey, we need a detonator. Well, Dr. Harding goes, I know a guy. Hey, we need uranium. Well, I know a guy. And so there's no searching. He just makes a call and procures everything illegal.
Or the other option is you could make it like an interesting, difficult thing they have to figure out rather than just do the same repeated action. But that's okay. Well,
yeah. I forgot to mention something from one of the earlier episodes. We've talked to every episode ends with a cliffhanger, and then in the opening minute of the next following chapter, you learn how the character did not really actually die.
Right.
And there is one in one of these episodes, I forget which, Larry is down swimming around in that underwater tunnel that we've seen so much, and a bomb explodes right next to him. Okay. And so that's the cliffhanger ending of that chapter.
Right.
Oh my gosh, there seems to be no way he could have survived. And the filmmakers also couldn't figure out how he survived, because when the next episode starts, Larry just surfaces and his little sidekick is like, hey, what was that? And Larry goes, yeah, there was a bomb down there.
Yeah.
And that's like the extent of the explanation. It just, the way he got out of it was the bomb just didn't hurt him.
Right.
So,
yeah. It's bizarre.
All right. Believe it or not, we are closing in on the end. And I think this was a regular feature in these serials, but wasn't there usually an episode towards the end that would recap everything that has come to date? Because that is what chapter 10, The Flying Gas Chamber, a very bizarre, a very bizarre title.
Yeah, I didn't understand.
It's a
that
recap episode.
Yeah.
So it starts with the heroes talking to each other, and one of them literally says to the other, "Let's recap what's happened so far." And then we get a lot of just footage from previous episodes. And I'm not going to lie, I took this as my excuse to skip this whole episode. So did they sneak anything in that was not a rerun?
Not really. But one of the things they reran, we didn't mention earlier, but I'll say it's my favorite bit because it looked like it was in a Zucker Brothers movie like Top Secret or something. In an earlier episode, when they steal the train to steal the uranium, they cut the signal to the next station.
Oh, yeah.
And they go up to the signal wires and they're like a foot apart and they've been cut and they're just sort of hanging there. And they're like, oh no, they've cut the wire. Can you fix it? And he's like, I don't know. This is going to take a while. I was like, what? And they replay that for it. I was reminded how silly that was.
Yeah, not everyone can be, Scotty.
Yeah,
from Star
that's
Trek
exactly what I thought of. I'm like, Nimoy's here. We could use James Doohan, and they would have captured these guys in chapter 2.
Well, Andy, I think the answer to your question about whether you missed anything is, other than the first and last chapter, if you didn't see a chapter, would you have missed anything? Would it have affected your enjoyment of the story?
Well, I mean, the answer is no, because there's not really much of a story. It's just a sequence of action scenes.
Yes.
For the most part.
I mean, I think you can miss a chapter or two and just be just fine.
I think it's probably written that way.
Yeah. Well, and comic books and stuff do this well, right? Like they're always aware that people are coming in at any issue or any chapter, right? So, and that works well here because these are all just extremely self-contained little action sequences, right? They just have to remind you every now and then what the Martians' master plan is, and that's really all the story development you need.
Exactly.
But listeners, we are down to our final 2 thrilling episodes. Chapter 11, the penultimate episode, is titled Man versus Monster.
Yes.
And in this episode, the Martians are tired of
the zombies.
Larry.
They're zombies.
Oh, sorry. The zombies are tired of Larry just shutting down all of their logistical transport. So they hatch a scheme to shoot down Larry's rocket ship so that he won't be able to interfere with their rocket ship. I just noted that this is all motivated by just the logistics of supply. Larry's rocket ship is just messing with their bomb supply routes, basically.
Right.
And this is the episode where the heroes do figure out that Dr. Harding is in on the scheme and that the Martians are working, that he is helping them build an A-bomb.
Right.
I don't have anything else down for this episode. John, you?
I don't. And actually, we have 2 clips in the last episode, so I'm kind of eager to get to it.
Exciting. Okay, well, in the final episode, it has a great title. This is Chapter 12, Tomb of the Traitors.
Yes.
And in this one, the Martian bomb is ready. And, it's the question, the Martians are trying to get off of Earth before it explodes and flies out of orbit. And Larry and his team are flying around trying to stop that from happening. So,
yes.
John, what did you have to say or to share from this?
There's only one thing I want to say, which is the zombies' rocket crashes, but one of the zombies stumbles out, survives, and I believe it's Larry, though it could have been Bob, runs over to him, and they have this exchange.
How about the others?
I think they're all dead.
You're in pretty bad shape yourself. Take it easy and I'll call for an ambulance.
No. First you must stop the bomb.
What bomb?
In the back cave. Through the water tunnel. It'll blow up soon. Destroy the whole world.
How can I get in there?
So I play that for 2 reasons. One is, it is an apocalyptic scenario, and I want to make that clear. But more, why did I want to play that, Andy?
Because that is Leonard Nimoy.
Leonard Nimoy in 1952.
It's so fun.
It is.
So is he regretting his plan, or does he just not want to be on Earth when the H-bomb goes off?
I get the sense he was regretting his plan. I don't know how you took it. And actually, your comment about the stolid acting, that's like the most emotional any character is in this entire serial.
By far. And how ironic, coming from the guy who's going to play Spock, whose signature is that he's not very emotional.
Yeah, so Larry stops the bomb, and then they all get back together at Larry's office, and we have to play this last clip because they're talking about Leonard Nimoy's character, and they use the one word we've been waiting for this whole movie.
That zombie has a fair chance of recovery, but he's still too weak to talk.
Yeah, so that's it.
It's a zombie movie.
It's a zombie movie now. 3 minutes before the end of its 2 hour and 47-minute run.
To be clear, the word zombie appears in the title of this whole serial and in the title of the first chapter, but no character says the word zombie until now.
Correct.
Is that right?
That is correct. So
that's a wrap. The world is saved.
Yes.
And we are done discussing this movie.
Yeah. Like, we've been slagging it, and we said it's not a zombie movie. But can we point to a lot of the things that I think point us towards the zombie movie?
Yeah.
Like, let's go through the questions, because I think there's stuff here that is pointing us the way we want to go.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, we have been knocking on this movie. I found it pretty rough to watch. But so we've talked before that there's kind of two joys of doing this podcast, John. One is, of course, seeing the evolution of the zombie genre.
Right.
But that unexpected bonus surprise was we're getting to watch the evolution of film.
Yes.
Right? And I felt like this movie has relatively little to say about the zombie genre evolution, but it actually has quite a bit of stuff about where film is going to go.
Yes,
right?
I agree completely.
So let's go through our questions. They aren't going to apply real strictly to this because it's not really a zombie movie, but let's go through these and see what we have to say. So, John, is there a hero party in this?
There is. There's like a super team and a superhero led by Larry Martin, and they're like a party of heroes that have to save the world.
Yes, and how does the party do? How many survive?
They all survive, but Larry gets beat up a lot.
Yeah.
Like maybe they should pick as their next hero somebody who can fight a little better. Just a thought. But yes, they all survive.
Yep. They do, but they are all of them are put in danger.
I feel like the amount of punishment Larry takes in this thing like presages Indiana Jones, whose sort of shtick is that he gets the heck beaten out of him every movie until he's like barely in one piece. So I enjoy that.
You know how many concussions Larry got?
Yeah.
13 chapters, 13.
Yes.
Every one he ends up knocked out. Oh, 12, because the 13th.
Yes. I wondered about that specifically. I think there's, a thin line between they're just not writing a very good action hero and in the Indiana Jones one where they are writing a very good action hero. He just happens to be kind of always taking a lot of abuse and always having to just react to disasters that he may have contributed to, right?
Yeah, and Indiana Jones shtick is that he just won't quit, right? And I think that's what gives him his tenacity.
So. A lot like our noble hero Larry Martin, who just never quits.
Yes.
All right, is there a zombie horde in this movie, John?
We've got 3 people from Mars who they call zombies who don't act very horde-like. So I would like to say no.
And
other than the green face paint.
Yes. How are zombies destroyed or killed in this movie?
Actually, I think you could just shoot one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they shoot any Martians?
I don't think so. I think they die in the ship crash.
Yes. So I think though that they seem like they would be vulnerable to just being shot by a gun.
Yes.
Okay. What type of zombie strain are we dealing with here, John?
I'm not sure we're dealing with one, except there's one important idea that I think this movie introduces. And it's not really about zombies, but it's about the nature of the villains in the movie, which is that they are other. They are outsiders. In this case, they're from Mars, right? But really they're Russians or Chinese or whatever, but they're communists who've come to destroy our way of life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's, I think, the big push in the 50s and what we're going to see more of.
Yep. And are there any, I guess there's not really any new strains of zombie here. Well, maybe there is. Are there any zombie firsts that we need to call out?
I don't know. I don't think so, other than the jump from genre, from sort of mysticism to science fiction. Like, I think the 50s is just, we just jumped, like we missed. There was some transition outside of the zombie verse where the 40s turned into the 50s and science fiction just hit hard.
Yeah.
And we kind of missed it. Maybe because we didn't watch any science fiction in the 40s because we were watching zombie movies. But
but there is no mysticism whatsoever. This is a science movie.
Yeah, 100%.
Quote.
The first Aliens.
And the first Aliens, which I think we're going to run into a lot of aliens as zombies in the next 10 years too.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the part where we go through your 4 zombie pillars of the zombie genre, John.
Right.
And we're going to have some different answers, I think, for this one. Is there an apocalypse in this movie?
We don't see an apocalypse, but there's a potential for a very real one. And I think that might be another first, too. I think with the ideas of the H-bomb and the uncertainty that all brings, I think that we're starting to see movies talk about an apocalypse, which we didn't really before, with the exception of Revenge of the Zombies, where a zombie horde could defeat any army. We're actually talking about the end of the world now, you know?
Yeah. Yep. I do think that's an important thing that is going to become pretty common going forward, although we will wait and see. Is there contagion in this?
No, there is not. The only thing that is sort of contagion-esque is that you can't trust your neighbors, maybe. Because I think... Yeah. Our hero party does know Dr. Harding in another context. And at one point they say, we should talk to Dr. Harding. He would know something about this. As if they trust him, but it turns out he's a spy and a traitor. So that's not
And Merrick's also early on tells Dr. Harding, your lab assistants, Shane and Roth, they're already on my side. So he's been betrayed and doesn't know it.
Yes, and I think, we start seeing it in other things like The Thing from Another World or Body Snatchers in the near future, where it's all about you don't know who you can trust anymore.
Yeah. Are there tough moral choices in this movie?
I'd like to say yes, but I think it's no, right? It's just maybe Dr. Harding is the one example where we didn't play a clip of it, but when they asked him to help out, he's like, well, okay, you got me. Like, I feel like if that had been more tortured, it could have felt like a tough moral decision.
Yeah.
I feel like swimming in dress shoes.
That's a bad moral choice. I agree.
And lastly, does this movie feature loved ones turning against you?
No, not really. I'd like to pin Dr. Harding here too, but I don't think so.
All right. So, John, the last couple of questions we ask are, would you and I survive in this zombie world?
Oh, I don't know, because the zombies don't actually manage to kill many people. In fact, our hero kills more people. He sinks a submarine, for God's sakes. So,
yeah, well, the kill count is very, very, very low. It's so low that at the end, when like those two henchmen are killed because they fall off a cliff, I was actually shocked they had that on screen, because it was not graphic at all, but it was by far the most graphic death that occurred in the whole show.
Well, I hope that I could, and I hope that they would give me a rocket pack. That's my position.
See, I think as we've had with a few earlier zombie movies that involved like the mob.
Yeah.
I don't trust that I would be able to survive if, this group of mobsters were after me, even though in this movie they don't seem very good at actually killing their enemies.
Well, I was going to say they'd have to be better shots for me to be scared.
Yeah, I could escape the robot. I would avoid the Martians. But yeah, I don't know.
Mobsters are always an X factor. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, John, do you recommend this serial firstly to our legion of zombie-loving listeners, and then generally and do you recommend it just generally to someone who maybe doesn't love zombies as much as we do?
I'm going to have to say no to both, but with a caveat. I think it would be worth your time, whether you're a zombie fan or just a movie fan, especially if you're a Gen Xer, to just watch the first chapter. Because I think my brain went, wow, this is like the inspiration for all of our favorite, creative people in the 80s. Like, it's here it all is. And that's an exaggeration, but if you watch it, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by all the little stuff you see.
Yeah, I had the same thought. I don't really recommend this for its zombie content, which is, although there are some threads of connection, and I'm glad, John, that you were able to identify a couple of them, it's still very, very weak sauce as far as zombie stuff goes. So skip it if you are a zombie person. And it's also just a tedious slog for most of it. Interesting more for what it hints is coming in film than for what it actually does. So pick an episode.
If you had watched this over 13 weeks instead of one evening, would you have enjoyed it more?
Yes. I would have enjoyed it more, yes.
For sure. If it were a TV show that I were just watching, I would have enjoyed it more.
And the repetition would have felt just much less onerous.
Yeah, exactly.
So watch the first episode. It's the longest one. It probably has the most varied stuff going on in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and you get to see that tankette, which is
amazing.
Which is pretty good.
You could also watch the last one and see Leonard Nimoy, though we played his one line for you. So
yeah, like that. We have shared with you the entirety of Leonard Nimoy's performance.
Yeah.
So you don't need to go watch that. So
yeah.
Okay. Well, it's that time. The scariest part of every episode, where producer Brad reveals to us what we'll be watching next.
We are going to leave 1952 and go to 1953. Okay. And here is the poster.
Yeah.
Oh. This is Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis in Scared Stiff.
Huh.
John, you want to describe this this very dramatic poster?
Yeah, because I was taken aback because on the very top are Martin and Lewis like howling and making huge scared eyes, and you can tell which one is Lewis because his eyes are crossed, and under them is a ghost, and it says Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis, It just says Elizabeth Scott and Carmen Miranda. The title Scared Stiff, and it pictures Carmen Miranda dancing with a band and Elizabeth Scott also. So it seems very silly, and it's all illustrated. There's no like photos or anything.
So I just need to confirm, we are going to see a zombie at some point, right? In the 50s? Like, we'll watch a movie that has a zombie in it? I just want to make sure.
This movie we've already discussed.
That's right.
This is a remake of The Ghostbreakers.
Oh,
all right.
Okay. Fantastic.
And The Ghostbreakers is a remake of a prior film too. So it's a series of remakes.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
right.
this one looks pretty fun. I have a little bit more confidence in these kind of quote comedies as we get a little later in time. So I guess we'll see.
Yes. And I think Jerry Lewis is funny. So, I think Dean Martin, I don't know what Dean Martin's job is, to be honest, but he drinks and he smokes, and I respect that, but we'll see.
All right. Well, there you have it. This was Zombies of the Stratosphere.
Please join us next time as we talk about Scared Stiff. Thanks, everybody. You've been listening to Zombie Strains. We'll be back next episode to talk about another zombie movie. If you enjoyed our podcast, please take a moment to rate us in your podcast app of choice. Tell a friend. Follow us on Instagram at zombiestrains. All of this helps like-minded people find the show. See you next time.